This video is the ultimate guide for the installation of a whole home humidifier, whether you have the fan-powered, direct mount, or a bypass duct humidifier. Both of these can be purchased from your local hardware store, and I'll be walking you through the steps of the installation of the unit itself, as well as the electrical and the humidistat, and everything in between. I do want to note that the installation between these two are very similar. In fact, they're almost exactly the same with a very slight variation. I'll be walking you through the steps for the fan-powered direct mount, and I'll include steps for the bypass duct humidifier. To make things simple, if you have a direct mount fan-powered humidifier, you want to try and mount this on the supply side of the ductwork. So that means if you've got a furnace that's sitting vertically like this, you want to mount yours on the supply side. This goes directly to the house, which means it's a lot less work for the humidifier to just take that air using the fan and push it through into the supply side of the home. So if you've got direct fan powered, that goes on the supply side. Now, if you have an alternate unit and it's a bypass duct, in that case, you'll want to mount it on the return side and then have your bypass duct run to the supply side. Thankfully, I have room on the supply side of my furnace. But if I didn't, in that case, I would have no choice but to put it on the return side. So I've split the unit open, and I'd like to demonstrate the difference between a fan-powered humidifier and the bypass. In this case, you have the water that runs through the humidifier pad, and then you have this fan that will blow that humid air right into the supply. So it goes directly into your house. There's no bypass duct, nothing. It's a lot more efficient, and you'll be able to humidify your house a lot faster. In a bypass situation, it is the exact same setup, but you don't have a fan. And so what happens is the water runs through the pad, and then the air will naturally be pushed through a bypass duct, which then you run to your supply line. So yes, they are both exactly the same unit, except this one's got a fan, and so it'll push that air directly into your house, making this a lot more efficient and a better bang for your buck. Typically, your humidifier will come with a template, and you're going to take that template and you're going to find the location that best suits. So right here, and you're going to tape it, make sure it's level, and then we're going to cut it out. So we're going to use either your Snips, or I'm going to be using an angle grinder and then just cut a perfect square. So what I've done is I've traced it with a Sharpie. I can now take this off, and there's my perfect square. So we're going to cut that out, like I said, with either Snips, angle grinder, or a cutoff tool, your choice. Once that's done, we'll be able to actually mount the unit. I've just done a little bit of a test fit, and what you'll see is that right at the top, there's a clip that wedges into the actual sheet metal. One there and one there. Okay, so you got two at the top. And then on the bottom, there are these little tiny tabs. Let me try and get my flashlight. And those tabs, and I'm not sure if you see them, but they also sit into the sheet metal. So you really have four tabs, two at the top and two at the bottom, that will sit into the sheet metal and hold it in place. So right now it's actually held in place, and I have no screws holding it. Once you have it positioned in place, you'll want to throw a level on it, and once you've got it perfectly level, in that case, you're going to take your sheet metal screws that are included in the package, and I'll show you those here. Take those screws, and you're going to secure three at the top. You'll see there, 1, 2, 3 holes, and three at the bottom, 1, 2, 3. We've now got it mounted with our 6 sheet metal screws, 1, 2, 3 in the bottom, 1, 2, 3 at the top. Now going to reinstall the humidifier pad. So just make sure you take that water line and you're going to attach it at the top here. See where that little nipple is? Right there. Reattach it, and then you're going to put it in. So you'll see the drain side goes into the drain hole at the bottom, and then it simply clicks in, click. And then, like I said, make sure this is plugged in at the top, and then you tuck it into the side like so. So you see how it's tucked in along the side, and then it goes into the nipple. And then you can reinstall the cover, and then we're going to start working on the plumbing. And I know many of you are asking, if this isn't perfectly level, is it going to be an issue? And the answer is yes, because when the water flows, it trickles down this pad evenly. If it's not level, the water is going to accumulate on one side and you're not going to have perfect distribution. And you could also have a leak. If you have too much water on one side of the pad, at the top, if it's not draining fast enough, it could leak down the actual housing and then drain into your furnace, which is not what you want. So you want to ensure this is perfectly level. Also notice that my cut is not perfect. You'll see here in that corner. So you want to ensure that you have no leaks. So you have two options. You can either tape it with aluminum HVAC tape, or you can get some clear HVAC silicone RTV, and you can RTV the entire surrounding of this unit, just so that you have a perfect seal and there's no air leakage from between the housing and the actual vent. First thing we need to do is connect our drain hose. So this is the drain hose and it's got a little clamp at the bottom. You're going to install that. At the bottom of the unit, there is a nipple, which you'll make sure it's securely fastened to all the way up. And then you're going to take that clip and clip it in. Once it's clipped, then you need to run this drain hose to a drain. You either have a drain in the ground or you have a separate unit, which I do right there, that connects all of your drains and then pumps it out into the one single drain located in an alternate location. This is my draining unit, and you'll see that this one is coming from my furnace, or rather this one is coming from my air conditioner. This one is from my furnace, and I have one extra port at the back here. So I'm going to remove the plug, and I'm going to take my drain hose and I'm going to put it into the unit just like that. I'm probably going to cut that hose a little shorter, but you'll see now I'll be draining right into this unit. And what happens with this unit is when the water level gets to a certain height, it will pump it out and it'll send it to the drain, which is located across on the other end of this room.
Now, you need to install a water line to your humidifier. I cannot guide you as to the best option for you. Some of you may have pets, others may have copper. Complete the installation with the 1/4-inch braided water line. Do not use the included saddle valve and plastic water line. They are not reliable.
So as I mentioned previously, I won't be using the saddle valve. And so what I've done is I've connected a water line using a PEX T, and I've added a valve here, and I have a 1/4-inch braided line that runs straight to the solenoid. This way, we avoid any sort of leaks with the plastic piping, as well as a saddle valve, which is known to have leaks. They're very prone to leaks, and they're very frowned upon in the plumbing industry. So I highly recommend a braided water line for this connection.
Up to this point, the installation steps for both the fan-powered and the bypass duct model have been the same. Now, I will include clips to separate differences for each unit.
Now we've got our pressure switch, and what this is going to do is control whether or not you are going to turn on your humidifier when the humidistat tells it to. In other words, this is going to detect when the furnace is actually running, and then if the humidistat is asking for humidity, this will allow it to run. So what we're going to do is mount this using 2 sheet metal screws on the return side of our ductwork. There's 2 holes for sheet metal screws, and what you're going to do is have these 2 nipples pointing downwards and the black side facing you with the terminal connections facing you.
Skip ahead.
When you're working with the pressure switch, it's a little bit easier on this model. You are using 1 piece of vinyl tubing to go from the solenoid and the pressure switch to the return side, which is the exact same installation in terms of the nipple that goes into the return side, and that 1 piece is going to trigger this to open and close, which then will allow this humidifier to run. Now I've got my pressure switch mounted on the return side of my ductwork, and the important thing to note here is that this pressure switch is going to allow us to complete all the connections without actually going into the furnace control board, because let's face it, if you're on here, you're not an HVAC technician. So it's better that you don't tinker with the control board. Some people will wire it directly to their furnace and bypass this pressure switch, but I recommend, if you're not an HVAC technician, use this pressure switch included in the package, and now let's wire it up. First thing we're going to do is drill a 3/4 inch hole on the return side of the ductwork as well as the supply side. The easiest way to do that is with a step drill that'll allow you to cut 3/4 inches. Got your holes drilled on both return and supply side. Add in your rubber grommets that are included in the package, and then you're going to take the plastic elbows and pop them into place, just like so. Repeat on the supply side. Now you'll cut a piece of vinyl tubing and connect the return side to the gray port on the pressure switch. That's the one in the back. And then you'll cut another piece of vinyl tubing to go from the supply side to the front of the pressure switch, which is the black port. There you have it. Return side and supply side, both connected to the pressure switch. Again, remember, the vinyl tubing from the return side goes to the gray port on the pressure switch. That's the one in the back. And then the vinyl tubing from the supply side goes to the front, which is the black port. All right, now let's talk about the humidistat. You either have an analog, which is on the right, or a digital, which is on the left. I'm going to show you how to wire both in case you decide to upgrade if yours came with an analog, or if you have a newer kit and it came with a digital, I'll show you how to install that.
Skip ahead.
Now, when it comes to the wiring of this specific model, what you're going to have is one strand of wire coming from the pressure switch and solenoid. The other end, don't touch it. And one strand of wire coming from the transformer that's included in your package. It's a 24-volt transformer. The other end, don't touch it. And lastly, you're going to have your humidistat, which on the back has 2 black wires. Now, in order to wire this, you're going to take the red from the pressure switch and the red from the transformer and connect them together. So I've done that here. As you'll see, I've got 2 reds connected together. Those 2 reds, like I said, one comes from the pressure switch, the other from the transformer. Now that you've connected the 2 red wires, one coming from the pressure switch and the other from the transformer, you're now going to connect the 2 white remaining wires. You have 1 white wire coming from the control switch, and you're going to connect that to the 1 black wire on the humidistat. It doesn't matter which one. And then you'll have another white wire coming from the transformer, which you'll connect to the other black wire on your humidistat. Once you complete that, this is now active. And again, the way this works is once you set your humidity, once this asks for additional humidity, it will confirm that there is vacuum on the return side. And if there is, this pressure switch will close, which then will activate your humidifier. The kit comes with these terminals that you're going to connect low voltage wires to, which then connects to the pressure switch. So we're going to do that first. There you go. We've wired those up to the terminals and connected it to the pressure switch. No particular order, you can put either of them into either terminal. Now, if you'll be using an analog thermostat, you're going to use the template that came in the kit, and you're going to paste it on the return side of your ductwork, and you're going to cut the hole, and you're going to screw this in. That way, the air coming back from the house is going to run across the back of this thermostat, and it's going to be able to sense the humidity, and then you can change the dial here as to what humidity level you want. Now, when it comes to wiring of this analog thermostat, it's very simple. You're going to cut yourself 2 strands of wire. Take 1 strand of low voltage wire and connect it to the 2 yellow terminals on this humidifier. We're not using these red ones. The red ones are not to be used when you're using an analog thermostat. So 1 strand of wire connects to these 2 yellow terminals. And on the other end, leave it. Don't touch it. Then you're going to have a 2nd strand of wire, the one we already connected to the pressure switch. So from here, we have it from the pressure switch, and on the other end, we're not going to touch it. But once we get to the humidistat, basically this is a switch. It's bridging the connection. So what you'll do is you'll take the 2 red wires from both strands. So 1 red wire coming from the humidifier, 1 red wire coming from the pressure switch, and connect them together. And you'll take one white wire from one strand and connect it to the back of the humidistat. The humidistat has two black wires coming out of it. So one white wire goes to the black, and the other white wire coming from the humidifier goes to the other black wire on the humidistat. And that's all there is to it. Now, once you set your humidity, if there is vacuum and this pressure switch is telling the system you can now turn on, this will allow you to turn on the unit using this analog humidistat. So let's recap one more time. You're going to have the two red wires coming from the humidifier and the pressure switch connected together at the humidistat. And then you'll have a white wire from the humidifier and a white wire from the pressure switch, each of them connected to the black wire on the humidistat. And that's it. It's as simple as that. Wiring on the electronic humidistat is a little bit more confusing, but I'll make it simple for you. You need 3 strands of low voltage wires, okay? The first one is low voltage wiring running from the 2 red terminals on your humidifier. So, 2 of them into the red terminals, leave the other end unconnected. The second strand of wiring is from the 2 yellow terminals on the humidifier. Leave the other end disconnected. So far we have 2 low voltage wires running from the red and 2 low voltage wires running from the yellow. The third strand of wiring is coming from the pressure switch. 2 of them, leave the other end disconnected. And now I'll show you how to bridge them all together using the digital humidistat. Assuming you followed the instructions and you've mounted your digital humidistat to the return side of your ductwork, again, the package comes with a template, and this one is a little bit different. You drill a small hole and insert a reading module. But the way you're going to do this is crack open the back side of that humidistat. And what you're going to do is connect the 2 wires, both the white and the red, coming from the 2 red strands on the humidifier. So these ones here, these 2 are going to connect on the back side of your humidistat to the top, C and R. This is what's going to power your digital humidistat, C and R. Now you're going to take the red wire coming from the pressure switch and the red wire coming from the yellow terminal on the humidifier, and you're going to connect those 2 together. Just the 2 red strands, as I've done here with a wire nut. The third connection you're going to do is take the white wire from the pressure switch and the last white wire coming from the yellow terminal on the humidifier, and you're going to connect those 2 white wires to the U. So there's a U and a U. You're going to connect those 2 U's, again, one coming from the pressure switch and one coming from the humidifier. And that's all there is to it. And now, once this is mounted and powered up, which I'll show you in a second, let's do that now. Connect this here. There you go. Once it's plugged in, you'll see now, if I increase the humidity, you should hear a click. And there it is. And now my humidifier is running. So in both of these scenarios, whether you're using a digital thermostat or an analog thermostat, what's happening is the thermostat is calling for humidity. It's saying, hey, I need more humidity because I've dropped too low. But then, in order for this humidifier to kick in, that pressure switch has to say, yes, the furnace is now running, and now you should run the humidifier. Because if there wasn't a pressure switch, then the water would be going through the humidifier, but there's nothing happening. There's no air going through your home because the furnace isn't running. There's no air being blown into the house. So that's why this pressure switch is important, because it tells the system that there's actually air flowing through and that this can run. For those of you feeling adventurous and don't want to use a pressure switch and you want to wire this directly to your furnace control board, you need to understand one thing, and I'll also show you how to wire it. What you need to understand is that this pressure switch allows you to run the humidifier anytime airflow is present in the ductwork, which means it doesn't mean you need to have heat on. You could be running your circulating fan and still use your humidifier. But if you connect this to your furnace control board, I'm going to show you how to connect it so that only when the furnace is heating will this humidifier turn on. So if you're okay with that, I'm going to show you how to wire this directly to your control board. This is the furnace control board. Yours may not look like mine because you probably have a different furnace entirely. But there are two different boards that I need to talk to you about. The first is, of course, the one that we're looking at. In my case, you'll see here you have these terminals, and they're all labeled Y, W, G, R, C. What we're going to connect is the two wires from our pressure switch. One wire is going to connect to the C terminal. The other wire is going to connect to our W terminal, where there's currently a white wire going in. Black wire goes to C, and the white wire goes to W. You're going to connect your two wires from the pressure switch and put them here. And then you can get rid of your pressure switch altogether. Now, a different style furnace board may have a terminal labeled HUM. HUM stands for humidifier. In that case, you're going to connect to your one wire to the HUM terminal and the second wire to the C terminal. And that's effectively going to run your humidifier anytime there is heat present or the heat is being called for on your furnace control board. And by doing so, you can completely get rid of your pressure switch. And now your system is wired so that whenever you have heating on, your humidifier will also turn on at the same time. Just like that, we've completed the install of our Honeywell whole home humidifier. Again, this is a fan-powered model. If you have a bypass, it is the exact same installation. However, the difference is you will have extra piece of duct that runs from the supply to the supply or from the supply to the return. Or the opposite, depending on how much room you actually have on your plenums.